This is Beyond a Reasonable Doubt with your hosts, Mark Garrigus and Gary Smith.
You know, Gary, you were just mentioned before we got on Knott's Berry Farm, which I haven't been to, but I will tell in a long time, I should say. I used to. When was the last time you were there?
Personally, it's probably been about 9 months, but there was a while there where my whole family had annual passes, or I think that's what they're called. So my wife and my son would go often. It's in Buena Park, California. For people outside the area, that's sort of near Disneyland. So it's reasonably close to my house.
And it's been, I don't even know how long, but over 50 years. The Smucker's jams and jellies used to be the big kind of advertiser brand co-op with them. Is that still the case?
I'm not sure if there's necessarily a brand agreement, but there is certainly a large jam component to the Knott's Berry Farm thing. You know, they're very famous, I believe, for the boysenberry varietal, and there is still a bunch of that kind of stuff that is associated with the park. I'm not sure if the Smucker's relationship has endured, but there is still a lot of that, you know, synergy going on, whether or not.
Boysenberry, when I think about, I mean, that would be on a word association, that would be it. But is it kind of over the hill, or has it been revitalized? It's been so long since I've been there.
It's certainly been revitalized. I would call it current in terms of the Southern California theme parks. I might call it second tier. You know, I would say it's probably a step down from something like Disneyland, but is also much more reasonably priced. And I would say it's slated more towards younger kids. You know, Disneyland sort of does their best to appeal to the adults as well as the kids, whereas there's much more of the Snoopy, all of those characters are sort of infused into the Knott's Berry Farm ethos.
Got it. I don't know why I got off on this, but
because I told you my family's at Knott's Berry Farm today.
No, but I have fond memories of Knott's Berry Farm. In fact, I could tell a story about my brother getting arrested there, but I'll leave that. leave that
for somewhere else. But next time Party is out here and you need a daytime, a whole day activity, it's a good place for kids.
Where, if you had the choice and geography didn't matter, how would you rate Legoland, Knott's Berry Farm, and Disneyland? What order? Price, no object.
Disneyland is always going to be a number one. Legoland is 3, but only because of the size. It's small. There's not a lot to do there. And, at least when you do factor in geography, which I know you told me not to, it's to travel there only to have it be somewhat small and something you can sort of do in a half a day. Knott's is big enough that you can spend a whole day there. So I would put A number 1, Disneyland, A number 2, Knott's Berry Farm, and then in the B category would be Legoland. It's still great, and we've been there, and I loved it. It's awesome, but it's just because of the size, it's kind of falls into third position.
And Magic Mountain?
Magic Mountain, I probably haven't been to Magic Mountain in 25 years, so I'm not sure. I would not probably rate that as high for kids around the age of my son or your granddaughter. It seems more teenage to young adult in terms of the intensity of the roller coasters, at least to my memory. The last time I was there, things could have changed. But again, when you factor in geography, that one's a little tough for me because it's a bit of a trek.
Okay, I'm going to keep going. Universal,
I would say, is probably in the A number 2 or A number 3 position. I like Universal quite a bit. The rides are not nearly as intense as something like Magic Mountain, but in terms of like the movie engagement and the activations that they do, especially for a movie lover, Universal is fantastic. And I think that since they brought in the Harry Potter world, it's become much better for kids, and they're about to finish up a new roller coaster. I'm not sure if you've heard about this, based on the Fast and the Furious ride, that goes all around those extensive escalators that they have that go from the top area of Universal, where you go in, down to the backlot section. And I think that's going to be very interesting to see, having a roller coaster kind of going around that otherwise boring escalator ride. That's going to be pretty interesting.
Okay, I like the rankings.
Yeah. I didn't think that was going to be the content of Reasonable Doubt this week, but I had fun with that. Thank you for asking.
Well, it's interesting to me. It's woven into the fabric of Southern California. As you know, anybody who ever comes here from out of town, they always want to see one of the above. There used to be when I was a kid, I don't know if it's around anymore. Do you remember Lion Country Safari, or was that before your time?
I've heard of that, but I never went. So I think it might have been before my time, but never experienced it firsthand.
Yeah, there's been quite a few, and then well, we could go down that road. What's your story of the week?
Well, there was a resentencing hearing that was going on in Los Angeles County. I haven't been paying much attention. Do you know anything about that?
I've dealt with that for so often this week, including this Saturday morning, that I was going to move on to something else.
Well, we can move on to something else, but for full disclosure, that has been consuming a large portion of my last 2 weeks as well. So I was joking a little bit there for any audio listener who can't see me smiling at Mark, but that's certainly been in top of mind. But there's no shortage of other stories. What's caught your attention?
We did a Two Angry Men. By the way, I don't know if it was your invention, but you certainly were the first one to use it. The 2 a.m. And it took me a second to click 2 a.m. That was very clever. With Bill Maher this week, which was kind of interesting. You have any clip of that? Because I'll tell you why I thought it was interesting. He and I think it's been quite a week for Bill, because we had him on, Harvey and I had him on to talk about his meeting at the White House that I believe was arranged by Kid Rock.
Yeah.
And then came back and he gave his version of a book report, and he's been, is pilloried too strong of a word, or lambasted, or...
Yeah, no, I mean, the only issue that I take with that is that, yes, he has been vilified, but it's by such a small subset. They just happen to be the loudest on X and on social media. But the people that I will talk to, which pretty much encompasses the people that I consider reasonable, I don't think anyone has really any issue. I thought his 10-minute, monologue, or it felt like it was 10 minutes, maybe it was shorter, but his monologue on his show, sort of explaining his experience, I thought was remarkably measured, and also didn't, he did this thing on his show where he talked at length to camera about his experience of Trump. And then he sat down with his panel, and one of the guys on there immediately came out and said, well, you've capitulated, and now, you're clearly going to be nice to him. And it's like, you weren't listening. That was not, the speech was thoughtful. He said some things that I'm sure people didn't expect, but he was also still throwing barbs at him and talking about how he was throwing barbs at him to his face. So I don't know. I think the vilification is being overblown by those on the far fringes who are just horrified that someone who they considered an ally 8 years ago now has the audacity to be an open thinker.
Well, and what I reminded him in the 2 a.m. podcast, at least, is that for those who don't have a memory, they were in litigation over calling him the orange orangutan. Do you remember that?
I do. And that's not the clip that I picked. I picked a different clip because I think a lot of people have seen that clip before. But yes, he was in litigation with Trump for calling him an orangutan. And, now they at least had a friendly dinner. I don't think that that's going to mean that they're friends, or that Trump is going to stop calling him a loser with low ratings, publicly. But, as Bill keeps saying, as opposed to what? You just don't talk to people like that. That doesn't seem productive. And I think that that's a reasonable standpoint that he's coming from. But, there are, like I said, those on the fringes who think that should be cause for, exile.
Excommunication.
Yeah. By the way, Mark, the 2 a.m., if I did coin it, I have to go back and kick myself, because the number of people who have thought that I was suggesting that you were doing something in the middle of the night as a result of that acronym, you would be astonished how many times I've had to explain. No. That does not make sense that Mark is going to record with Harvey Levin at, in the middle of darkness. So let's all settle down a little bit.
2 a.m. is about when Harvey wakes up in the morning.
Yeah, exactly. Harvey's starting the next day at 2 a.m. So, all right. But as you asked for, here is a clip of that podcast. This one is just over a minute.
I disagree with you on something, but it's not about going there at all. It's not that. The thing that I took issue with was when you said the real Donald Trump was the guy you had dinner with. And the other guy.
I didn't say those words.
But that was the essence of it. That was the essence of it.
I said I just said he's different. I just said I can quote myself because I spent all week writing it and I know it by heart. And I took contemporaneous notes like James Comey, like after the dinner. Exactly. I was James Comey taking contemporaneous notes. So I tried to remember exactly as much as I could and the quotes. And what I said in the piece was he's a lot more self-aware than he is in public. Again, do you want a lie? Should I be a liar for you? I know that would make the 10% feel better. Or should I just tell you what I saw?
It's a great podcast. I encourage everyone to go watch it. My only note on that would be to Bill's team to angle his camera down a little bit. That's why the subtitles for him go above his head as opposed to beneath the chin for you and Harvey. But it was a great podcast, and I think a nice avenue for Bill to be able to explain himself as everyone is losing their mind. He tried to do so in his show, but he was up against two people who were not really willing to accept what he was saying and roll with it. They were trying to fight against him and turn him into the villain that the 10% has been intent on making him. And I thought that hearing him with you and Harvey, even as you saw there, Harvey was pushing back a little. He didn't necessarily agree 100%, but it was a more friendly conversation between the three of you, I thought.
Well, and I didn't know this until right before we did it. I knew that Bill and Harvey are close. I did not know that they were as close as they are. They're very good friends.
That doesn't surprise me. They seem like the two guys that would get along very well. And, being in the media spotlight the way they both are, I'm sure it's hard to find friends who don't have the same similar shared experience.
Well, it's interesting. The one, if you do the Venn diagram of thoughts, there is of this particular age strata a lot of kind of pushback, so to speak, now on on what they've labeled the 10%. I don't even want to tell you the jokes I used to tell about 10%, or my assistant used to tell about the 10%, but she did it in a different context. So I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, probably best that you do. And I again, I'm not even sure that it is 10%. I think 10% might be overblowing it. I think it might be 2 or 3%, but they are so loud and so amplified and so, in lockstep and larger than life on social media that I think it starts to feel like it's 10%, when in reality, I think it might be a lot less than that.
There was an interesting, I don't know what made me think of this just now, but there was an interesting article in the LA Times, and I give the Times a shout out because I think their studio did the podcast. You have this $22.5 million Modesto settlement. The reason it caught my eye is that the genesis of this case was, and I remember it happening in real time because I'd been in Modesto for another case. The DA in Modesto was one of the trial deputies in the, she kind of parachuted in as the Peterson case was going south. Birgit.
You glitched out on me there for a second, Mark. Could you start your sentence over? I don't want the audience to miss it, but.
Yeah, she parachuted into the Peterson case, and if you believe the prosecution narrative, she's the one who salvaged the prosecution. But she ended up then, I believe, running for the open seat or the DA's seat, served there, and then prosecuted a very vocal criminal defense lawyer and on a conspiracy to murder case that was largely built on informant testimony. And it was an incredibly over the top, ridiculous prosecution, and ended up in an acquittal and dismissals. And it just blew up. I mean, there really was no case whatsoever, but it lasted an interminable amount of time. And I think the gentleman's name is Frank Carson. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, Frank Carson.
I don't think, Frank is not alive anymore.
No,
he died.
He has passed.
His widow, as I saw something, had said that the case just took it out of him. It broke his heart and broke his spirit, as you can imagine. Nobody knows what. It's hard to try to convey in words the toll that a criminal prosecution takes on somebody, especially Frank Carson. I can only imagine, because he pushed back hard against prosecutors, and that was one of the reasons his widow says that he was so hurt by this. They just took it out on him because he was such a flamethrower when it came to do law enforcement and the prosecution. And the jury came back, or was it a settlement? I thought it was a verdict of $22.5 million for his estate. Verdict or settlement, Gary?
The headline that I'm reading says settlement, but let me try to investigate a little bit more here. Los Angeles Times headline also says Stanislaus County settles notorious malicious prosecution case for $22.5 million.
Yeah, it was just a wild case. I think probably, I haven't listened to it yet, but I'm so fascinated by this, and I think I'm going to listen to the podcast. And I think it's called, what's it called? The Trials of Frank Carson.
Let me see here and make sure that I get it right. But yes, it is an absolutely fascinating story. Let's see, the podcast is called The Trials of Frank Carson. You are absolutely right.
Yeah, I think that'll be my late Saturday night before 2 a.m. Listening schedule.
Well, you've got 8 episodes available now, so that should keep you get you through the rest of the night.
There's some other legal stories this week. There's been the U.S. Supreme Court coming in on a 9-0 vote on the deportation case. There's been they just, I believe, also granted either cert or agreed to hear another case. If you could call it up, I think just on Friday at 1 a.m., I think, if I read right. So I guess we should probably do that either I won't even speculate it as a midweek. I'm now I'm giving Gary a pass because I put so much on his plate. So the midweek is 2 a.m. substitutes as a midweek until we get that squared away. But we could do quite a bit of a recount or a recap, if you will, of what's been going on at the Supreme Court. It's been wild in the last 2 weeks.
There has certainly been no shortage of news out of the Supreme Court. I've been watching it, but it seems that every time, the best laid plans of reasonable doubt seem to be upended by something that happens in your immediate sphere in the days leading up to recording. And that's not a knock on you or what we've been talking about. It's just there's been so much going on in your immediate orbit that it has been hard to look at the 30,000 foot view. It's completely understandable when something like last week happens. How are we supposed to focus on things outside of the immediacy of what's going on? So yes, I agree. There's plenty we could cover, and we'll see what happens this week. And maybe we get to next Sunday and we'll have a little bit more bandwidth to cover things outside of our immediate orbit.
You got it. And Gary, happy Easter. It's one of, if not next to Christmas, we're ranking theme parks. You want to rank holidays. Easter is right up there. I love the story of redemption and the idea.
Well, and as a better Catholic than me, you tend to observe Lent a little bit more stridently. So I'm sure Easter is high on your list because there is an opportunity. I'm not sure that you will break your fast. I have this. I will confess that I do have this idea of, and it happens every year when I do Lent. I just see how long I can go. That's what I was just going to say, is that I know you probably won't break it, but the fact that you are now allowed, I'm sure, is a relief.
I've been blessed that I can break Lent. As we're sitting here taping this, actually, the reality is that I could do it right this second. But there is a part of me, I don't know why, it's probably a character defect, that likes to just kind of run the table, so to speak.
I'd prefer to call it a character trait.
It's a defect. Thank you. I appreciate that. Have a wonderful day. I'll bet you you're going to have some fun tomorrow with the little one.
Sure hope so. Yeah, there will be egg hunting abound, I would imagine. You enjoy yourself as well, and we will see you all next week.
Thanks, Gary.
Thanks, Mark. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Reasonable Doubt. Subscribe on YouTube at youtube.com/Reasonable Doubt Podcast.